this is a little bootleg, but let's talk what we saw in week 1. So let's just go down the line of the teams we saw in order. Boom Esports. Honestly, I was impressed. I think that's the best way to put it. The more I think about it, the more I think about that match with T1, the more I do think that they are still the same team, like in terms of, it's not like I don't see any drastic changes of, oh, they really like changed their color, or they're like really doing things differently. But I was impressed. Mostly just I think the prep is good. I think the prep was great, actually. I mean, we talked about it on Plat Chat as well, but obviously the anti on bind. But I think just overall, I thought the prep was pretty good. Like, even if it wasn't all hard anti against T1, just like the preparation about each map and like how they want to play each map and their understanding of each map. I would say DOS9 is a very, very good pickup, right? I think that's a huge thumbs up. So I think no one can really doubt that. I don't think anyone was really doubting it, though. I think we were all very impressed with both DOS9 and Sultan when they were on Revenant at Ascension. So I think we were all excited for it. But I mean, he was going pound for pound almost with Meteor on the first map, right? So I think you got to give him the credit there. Yeah, if you look at Pearl, DOS9 has 20 and 16. Meteor has 25. Obviously, Meteor both carried and potentially through the game sometimes, but I think it was good. Now, this was one of the maps that they did win both pistols. They did get ecoed, but obviously that's where it's like this should have been a 2-0, right? And I think that was probably the idea that Boom had, was like, we either 2-0 this or we don't. Just the way they played on both Pearl and Bind, it felt very much like they believed they should be 2-0ing this map. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you are the weaker team, I think that is kind of the attitude you have to have, quite frankly. So overall pistols was 5-1, which is like, in the grand scheme of things, like, yeah, if you're winning 5 pistols out of 6, like, you should be winning that best of 3. So but again, Boom was always going to be the weaker team. So I don't think that's like I don't think that spells trouble. I think it just confirms that while they looked good, yes, they are the weaker team, right? Like, that's, I don't think you can read too much into that. Talking about firepower, do they lack firepower? I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it's that they lack firepower, but do they have... Well, okay, the average is probably on the lower end. Obviously, T1 on paper should be much on the higher end in terms of firepower. So firepower, I think, is okay. But maybe you need a bit more. I think I would love to see the likes of DOS9. We should really just... I would like to see the likes of DOS9, Berserks, and Famous really go at it more often, right? I think if they go at it more often, it's okay. But really, what I think the biggest reason they lost, though, is mid-rounding, and this has always been the problem. Because even at Ascension, I think the thing that I gave them credit for was that their preparation is good. When they pick a fight, that fight is good. When they don't get the fight that they want, that's when it gets a little rough. So I think their mid-rounding needs work. Shiro should still be the IGL here, right? And I think his IGLing overall round to round is good, if not better. I think the prep just shined. But the game doesn't always go your way. So how do you overcome that? So I think if they can fix that, honestly, I can see them like confidently not being 12th. And I know that makes it sound really bad, but in all honesty, everyone thought they were going to be 12th. So, and on paper, they would be, and they should be. So if they can confidently not be 12th, I think that's already a pretty big step forward. And I think if they literally just get a bit more mid-rounding, like they're already not 12th, I think what they proved was nobody is clear 12th this year, right? Boom can punch up. I think that's what they proved. And I thought it was great. I mean, listen, literally the fact that they should have won 2-0, I think that's already like an insane glow up for them. And I don't think they're, let's see, they ran the Neon and the KO. They ran the Vice Unbind, yep. Yeah, with the KO. I liked that. And then they ran the Tejo. It wasn't that impactful, but it wasn't bad, I don't think, if I recall correctly. So it does seem like they are sticking to what they said at the end of Ascension, that they're gonna make sure they don't fall behind on the meta. I think I said it during the watch party, but it felt like they were playing at like, I want to say 85-90% of Ascension Grand Finals, and that's huge. Because to me, that was their absolute career legacy games for all players. You know what? Actually, no. Let's do all the teams that we only saw one match of so far. GE. Very happy with what I saw. I mean, this was a very hyped roster, lots of potential, and I think in the maps that they won, they showcased why fans of each of these players were excited for this roster. I would say that actually literally all of them performed to their hype at one point or another throughout this match. So I would say, yeah, all players lived up to their hype. Yeah, I don't want to count the Abyss. I mean, there's the whole thing that supposedly the coaches told the management that Abyss, was the one map that they're not as comfortable with yet. It could also be a case of Darion, right, picking up the Astra, maybe them changing their comp to accommodate the Astra, where they didn't want to play a hard Sentinel, so they're trying to figure out what they could play. And Darion has played Astra, and he said he might be okay with it, but it did look like they did look pretty uncomfortable adjusting anything, right? Obviously the defaults and stuff were prepped, but yeah, Abyss is sus. But otherwise, I think it's okay. Looking at what they did on the other maps, I'm not too concerned. Obviously the concern would be map draft. Future map drafts are a little bit, they could get a little dicey now, right? I don't think they necessarily don't like their Haven, to be honest. I do think this was more of a respect ban to Secret, right? Haven's always been Secret's bread and butter. So I just don't think you do that. I just don't think you go there with them. So I don't think that's the play. Now, that's a good question. Is GE doing well, or is Team Secret underperforming? I think it's both, to be honest. I'm not going to take anything away from how I was impressed with GE, because I was. Well, impressed makes it sound like I thought they wouldn't do well. I guess I was just excited about GE. That's a better way to put it. But I would also say that I was disappointed by Team Secret. Like, this is rough. We don't see this every day from Envy. And it did seem like I hyped up Wild Oreo a lot during the offseason, right? I kept mentioning him as another player that I'm looking at to really rise up next to Envy. And that, I mean, he got 17 kills here on Split, but I didn't really feel Wild Oreo's impact during this entire match, actually. So it's hopefully that's more of a just he's got to get back into the groove type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think GE played very well. Obviously Yudotan, you know, now the whole world knows about him. He's the real deal. Very aggressive. I like him as an entry. My style of entry. Like, he's got fragging power, but he's not afraid. He's consistently getting very impactful multi-kills, even if he's not top fragging. On Split, he was top fragging, actually. But he's constantly looking to basically have impact. Like, it's not even about space creating. I think he's just constantly looking at how can I have impact. So... I didn't think Yudotan was very good, but everybody else, right? I mean, we would have to list the whole roster here, right? But Crystal, Poppy, Kelly S, like, they all looked great as well. All great. Poppy, I think a lot of people always talked about Crystal and Yudotan and not Poppy, which I found very interesting. There was a lot of people that were mentioning Yudotan and Crystal, and then they're like, yeah, and maybe Poppy. And I'm like, really? Like, in my head, these were always like a package of 3 players that I was excited about. I am curious. I'd be very curious to hear their comms, even in like an edited comms video at some point. Because I wonder how much hands-on Kelios is doing mid-round in situations, because they do a lot of... GE does a lot of hyper-aggression on contact. Right? There's a lot of situations where if they run into, let's say, you know, one guy, he sees another guy, and then suddenly it's like ×3, like 3 people just like chase him, and then they just push through. Like, the moment they get contact, it's almost as if GE just like doesn't want to play the macro game, and the moment they get contact, they're like, well, we have to make sure like we don't leave anybody alive who's seen us, right? It's like you have to get rid of all the evidence, and they just run in. And I think that's fine for the most part. I don't know if it works well against teams like, you know, Paper Rex, T1, and then Talon at their best, right? Like, for instance, is that something that would be effective against someone like Primi? Like, I don't know. To be honest, I'm not sure. So, but I like it though, and I like that they're very committed to it, right? And this comes from someone who was I've always been under a lot of pain because I cheer on a team that didn't do that for 2 years, like not being committed to a certain style. So it was very refreshing to see that they were able to put that together in such a short amount of time. But obviously right now they're playing with Darion. So there's always going to be a bit of an asterisk if things don't go well. There will always be a question of how does that work. I do wonder time needed for Patrick, right? Like, are they going to need time to warm him up again once he arrives and they get to play like in stage 1 or whatever? And I say that more as not as a worry, but more just like temper expectations. If they look slightly weaker again when Patrick first joins, I don't think that's cause for concern. Team Secret, on the other hand, right? Oh, I didn't need to close that, but Team Secret, on the other hand, I mean, I am disappointed, right? Not because they lost, but outside of... well, okay, actually, before we do that, though, they did have that sick bait trap play on Split with the showstopper. That was sick. Like, that was well cooked. That was well cooked up. That I gotta give credit to. I think that was the coolest thing that we saw that day. Yo, Tireless Candy, thank you for the tier 1. I don't know if the audio went through there on... It didn't come through to me. I don't know if it went through on stream because my overlays are all over the place. But thank you. Thank you for the tier 1 sub. Appreciate it. Yeah, the Raise Lock bait. The Raise Lock bait was kind of sick. That I'll give them credit for. So clearly they've been cooking. Abyss looked good. Abyss looked pretty good. But I think they just weren't really expecting that amount of aggression from GE. However, I I will say, like, this is the team that would counter Paper Rex, right? So it's not that they're necessarily weak to aggression. I think they always just need a little time to download people. So they might just need time to download their opponents. Still very default heavy. That's not a bad thing. It can be a good thing. But it is something that teams can abuse against you. So if you don't know your opponent and your opponent knows that you're default heavy, the hyper aggression will serve them well because they know that you're going to wait to get info to react. So I think GE just played really well, like stylistically, against Team Secret. Jeremy played really well. Hopefully continues. But I would say, I mean, Envy, I'm gonna give him a pass just because, like, he's had maps like these every now and then when he's playing Flash. Although not so much on KO. Generally, he's very good on KO. But Envy, I'll give a pass. But Wild Oreo needs to, I think, have more impact. Obviously, he's gotten lots of kills on Split, but I think he needs a bit more impact. Right? Like, he had mega impact last year in Stage 2, in my opinion. And again, that doesn't mean just, I mean, obviously, if you drop 30 bombs or 40 bombs in a single map, then that's going to be impact just out of sheer kills. But outside of that, like, I think anything around 20 or less, it's much more about, are you getting the right kills at the right time rather than the actual number. So, right? Because at the end of the day, despite that, you're still at the nearby. Dude, Jeremy dropped 52. Jeremy dropped the most kills this match. Jeremy played some Valorant that day. That's rough. All right, we don't have much time, so let's get through this quick. DFM. It's my favorite summary was May and what was it? Now someone said it's May and semi friends, which I think is the best way to put it. May's still a beast. He popped off on Abyss, obviously. I mean, dude, how many kills did he have? He had 32 alone. The next was 19 on his team. I mean, May's goated. There's no, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Once again, I thought the calls on Abyss were pretty good. Calls on Abyss were pretty good, but in trying to rack my brain, I mean, yeah, you look at the score, there wasn't really much of a chance to see any other calls on the other maps, right? I mean, you got 6 rounds total on Pearl and Haven. That's rough. The art of the Odin limited on non-Odin maps, right? Because even on Abyss, like in the beginning, like for the choke point on A, it was good, but once you got a couple kills with it, the teams were pretty prepared and they were kind of waiting and making sure that you had to basically get bad angles or be in movement. Obviously, art's still very good with the Odin, but I think maybe the hype's not going to be as strong. Jinbung, I think, played really well for what he could do. I think Jinbung showcased his mechanical skills. Obviously, the big question comes down to GN. GN, listen, I think it's too early to judge, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good, but it looked like he was. You know what it felt like? It kind of felt like me a bit of NDG's debut, right? NDG's debut, he looked lost. He looked like he wasn't in the game. And I don't know if this was ever shared publicly, but I'm pretty sure NDG's debut, like, he just had like a ton of like tech issues, but he like didn't realize that those are issues. He just thought that's just how it was playing on stage or something like that. So like it almost felt like that. It almost felt like there were like nerves and he was out of the comms and things like that. Now, how much time would I give him if I was DFM's coach? That's hard to tell because I have no idea. I guess the big question is what's he look like in scrims, right? Because if he looks really good in scrims, and this is a stage problem, then I would give him a year. I would give him the full year. I think because obviously you picked him for the potential and not to just like carry the very first match, right? So if he looked really good in scrims and in trials, then I would say I would give him a year. Obviously, you know, depending on if management's with me, etc., etc. But as a coach, I would want to give him a year. But if like even in scrims, like if the comms and such are really rough and we only picked him up just because he's like literally just a ranked demon, yeah, and then you consider the VCT schedule, yeah, maybe even a full year is rough. But if May vouched for him, I mean, surely he has a bit more to show, right? So, yeah, I think the unfortunate part is unfortunately, I guess we should put that in all caps because this is very unfortunately, Gen's in the crosshair, right? Everybody's looking at Gen. It doesn't even matter if like Akame just like bombs out every other map. It does not matter if Art just keeps on wasting creds on the Odin. Gen just doesn't have an identity right now. And as someone with no identity and no past career, he's going to be under the most fire. Because we have a ton of rookies who are fragging. And so while I don't think that's fair to him, it's up to the team to bring him, into a comfort zone. And quite frankly, losing and getting eliminated and using a full month and a half to do that might be the answer. It might be the answer because they're facing either Talon or GE, and I do not favor DFM in that matchup. RRQ. I mean, listen, they look better. That's for sure. RQ looks better. Jemkin seems much more proactive. And that's great. I think they needed that. I've been talking about that for a long time. Cushy looks great, right? Another very, very solid pickup, similar to DOS 9. So I think that's all fair, right? I talked about him in Plat Chat. Jemkin, diffs even May in overall in their duels. Just outfrags everybody else. Poor Art getting farmed by Jemkin, 17 and 8. Honestly, though, I think for more people to actually believe or have hope for RQ, I do think like Moneta and Xfero, I think need a bit more consistency. And then Estrella needs to find fragging consistency. But it's hard to call it. Again, I've talked about Estrella several times, but Joseph Onarum 22, thank you for the tier 1 resub. Thank you, appreciate it. But I hesitate to call this fragging consistency just because I think it is much more of a positional and confidence thing. Because when he frags. That was true last year too. But I think the positional stuff was better than it was last year. But I think he still gets scared of, he plays like he's playing against May, no matter who he's dueling, if that makes sense. So I think Estrella needs, but then like some other times he goes, yeah, it's a consistency thing. I think Xfero and Magnet both need to cool off just a bit. I think Xfero is more at fault here than Magnet. I think he makes more of those mistakes. I think he overheats a bit more, especially as in the roles that he plays. But overall, though, it looked good. I would say overall the calling was still good. And I thought the prep was pretty solid. I mean, this is another match where it should have ended 2-0, right? It should have ended 2-0. RQ's Haven was always pretty solid, actually. I was kind of surprised that DFM was happy to go to Haven. What was their last ban? Split? I really think they might have had a better shot on Split, but Maybe, I don't know, maybe Jin felt more comfortable on Haven, I don't know. But RQ was always very good at Haven, so... But I think they have a decent... I think they have a decent foundation for defaults, calls, and styles. Really just needs, like, just a tad less, like 5% less overheating. Individual overheating. And I think they could maybe look a bit more consistent. Zeta division. Looked better than I thought, actually. You know, I know maybe that sounds like I'm being tongue-in-cheek, but they really did. They did better than I thought. I think they had their moments. I mean, this was such a Nongshim show that it's really hard to talk about Zeta and what we saw from them, quite frankly, right? But I mean, Nongshim still looked very good, and you were still able to, you know, force them to really lock it in. So, yeah, I don't know if we really saw much of it. Was much more about, I guess, where I give them credit is to adapting to Nongshim enough, right? But I don't know if we really saw what Zeta would be made of, if that makes sense. The new guys are not super convincing. Still need some work. That is true. I mean, Clues and Shota had some moments, though, I would say. So, yeah, I'm not gonna harp on them too much. It's not like any one of them like completely just like couldn't frag or anything like that. What does their game look like? Like, if they played, for instance, if they played against Team Secret, like, are they gonna be able to play at different tempos? Are they gonna play aggro? Like, are they gonna play slow? Like, we just don't know, because Nongshim just didn't let them play their game. And I would say that when you're not being allowed to play your game and you're still putting up 9 rounds, it's not bad. I don't think there's really any too big of a concern for Zeta, but this is a hard game to really gauge Zeta. I do agree that Shota does need to show more, though. Needs more based on hype, because I expected a lot more from him. But like, they're basically a roster where I'm like, I'm willing to give them time, but that's about it. The end. I mean, this is a tough match to base their performance off of. Paper Rex. Oh, where do we start? Disappointing. Probably the most disappointing, actually. Just because based on expectations. Paper Rex was probably the most disappointing based on expectations, honestly. Yeah. I mean, they did... Okay. They clearly, like, cooked stuff up. Right? Like the pistol on Fracture, things like that. Like, there are moments where you're like, okay, you like planned this out. You thought about these things. Yeah, the bind comp was not it. But some of it is undercooked. Yeah. And then they're not as full send. Not as full send. Could be better in the long run. Could be good for them. But right now, like, especially against a team like Team 1, feeling like you have several rounds where you just don't have an identity was rough. It was rough. Well, and then there's that, right? It's like, at least you're playing Killjoy. At least Killjoy. But then it's like, in this meta, right? Like, in potentially the one meta where Killjoy shouldn't really have a spot and everyone is just playing her out of comfort. And then you're bringing out the Sage on Split, right? Like, it does feel like they don't... Maybe not a good pulse on the meta. Honestly. I don't think they have a good pulse on the meta. And not that they ever did, but they always had a good pulse on what their style would look like in the current meta. But right now... It just feels like it kind of still feels like a little bit of last year. And that's sad to see. Yeah, they were losing duels, but I mean, I don't know. Oh, something was a bit off. Something is off. Something was a bit off. I guess that stood out. But other people losing duels, quite frankly, I mean, like Stax was fragging. Meteor, like I think T1 was really stepping up to the plate. Buzz was 23-11 on bind. Like I don't know if you can really say that they were looking weak. But yeah, but you have to remember, this is all, like this entire thing is all because all due to high expectations, right? Still think good enough to reach top 4. It was a little, that wasn't the Paper X we're used to seeing, but it was their first match, and sometimes they start really slow. The game's starting. All right, we'll jump over. Let me just wrap this up so I don't have to come back and get to it. We'll get to the game in a second here. You know what? Actually, let's come back to this. Let's come back to this in between, because there's going to be breaks anyway. All right, let's talk about DRX, because DRX are looking spicy. Man, it happens every time. I tell myself DRX is going to need time to really bring their newer players up to speed. And you know, to gel and for them to learn fundamentals and all that. And I mean, listen, I think this has always been the case, but the coaching staff is like, what is it, quintuple proven now. I mean, it's incredible. The fact that they can get any talented new player up to speed to play at a top 4 team level within the region and potentially higher every year is actually crazy. I mean, I guess it's scouting too. Plus good scouting as well. But we can talk all we want about, I mean, I'm in the same boat of, man, they've never really been able to broken through higher, like get to the actual grand finals, like things like that. But being able to do this every year, bringing someone new, and I mean, for instance, Buzz and Mako were also part of that equation, right? 2 guys, especially Mako, didn't have as much experience. They bring them in, they make them change roles, and then they get to a friggin' lower final, you know? It's crazy. Still have to consider some of Termi's decision in Juris. I would say the one decision that year, but also not knowing all the internal conversation around it, just even from the outside, that was before we all accepted that we need to move on from the old DRX, right? So the expectation within Korea in 2023 was that DRX still has to be #1 in Pacific. Like, they have to be #1 in Pacific. They absolutely have to be #1 in Korea. And they should absolutely be getting higher than 5th, 6th at internationals. Like, that was the expectation still. So while I agree, like, I don't like the decisions he made, I don't blame him. So I don't hate on it. Let's put it that way. I dislike the decision. I think it's good to call it out, but I don't hate him for it. And I'm not going to discredit Termi because of that. Let's put it that way. And I don't know. I don't think I have any problems with last year's decisions, quite frankly. I mean, I was one of the people calling for a bigger change on the roster. So quite frankly, I'm kind of in line with that. So, like, you can be a fan of the original, like, I like all the original players, right? Zest, RB, Stacks, like all Buzz, like all the guys, but that doesn't mean that I think that group was always going to be able to break through higher. So you can disagree with it, but I think 2024's decisions, I don't know if you can discredit that. I don't think you can discredit him. I think you can disagree. The Foxy 9 decisions in 2023, I think it's valid to dislike it. But personally, when I put it into the big picture, I don't know if I still necessarily discredit Termi because of that. Yeah, but anyway, enough about that. Yeah, I don't know. I think I do think it's overblown. Like, I think because of the Foxy 9 one, anytime they do something that people don't like now, they're like, oh, well, the coaching staff has to be questioned for this, and they have to be interrogated, and they have to, like, prove themselves, and they have to justify everything. And I'm like, wait, but, like, literally the Foxy 9 one was the only one that was, I think, objectively not, like, good or fair. I think all the other ones were, even just from the outside, I think they were, like, you can dislike it, but I don't think it's questionable. Mako is IGLing now. He wanted to, which is crazy to me that Mako wanted to. I mean, Freeing jokingly said that Mako was fed up with his IGLing and he wanted it back. And he joked about how he's fine with it because now he can just focus on fragging, which I think is great. But I do wonder what that conversation was like, because if I'm not mistaken, Freeing wanted to try IGLing, and that's why they tried it. I'm just curious. I'm just curious how that all came down. Obviously, I think Mako's IGLing was good in the Nongshim match, actually. I think it was good, and he was still able to find really good positions, which is one of the things Mako was always best at. The Mako IGLing is great. And it lets Freeing focus on fragging. Freeing played Tejo 3 times. Is this necessarily the right read on the meta? Or is this them just leaning heavy into the Tejo? Granted, Lotus and Fracture, I think, are very, I think they can be very given. I was originally not sold on Lotus, but actually I think Lotus, obviously, with the Rubble fight and everything, very solid. Pearl, personally, I'm not huge on, but they played it very well. The Tejo, at least, like, Freeing was also just fragging. I think that's the thing, though. I think it just lets him frag. And I do think also, I'm also curious if this was partly just because it was against Nongshim, because I do think Tejo is good against Nongshim. I do think Tejo is pretty good against Nongshim, especially if they keep playing the Neon. So I'm curious what else they'll play. I don't know if they're going to be playing this on every map. I guess that's my question. But yeah, there's really not much to pick on for DRX, right? I mean, this match was a bit of a banger. Nongshim also fragging out. Nongshim completely shuts down the Pearl. And gets 8 on the first half, and then after the pistol, just all of them in the second half. I like the going back to the Viper as well with the Tejo fade. I really like it. Yeah, the Pearl, I'm not completely sold on. But then, yeah, Fracture was really solid as well. Curious to see what other comps they'll play. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really... I mean, Pro was the only... Obviously, Pro, they didn't get many rounds, and I think they just didn't look as fluid and also able to adapt to the Vice. But outside of that, like, I don't think there's any one individual where I was like, yeah, they look like they need some more time with this agent or in this team, right? Like, obviously, the only ones that really would have been up for questioning for that would have been maybe like Hyunmin and Bane, because Freeing, I think, already proved himself more than well enough during the offseason. Yeah, let's talk about Hyunmin. I thought Hyunmin had a great debut. I think Hyunmin lived up to my expectations. I think the thing is I didn't expect him to, like, pop off and take over the entire match in his very opening match. But I think what Hyunmin did was he showcased enough, like, cracked rounds, right? Just enough cracked rounds, potential proven. And then he wasn't, like, overheating either. So, yeah, I guess this is the way to put it. He had just enough cracked rounds that his potential was proven, but didn't leave the system. Which that's the impressive part. So I think Hyunmin's, like, ready to continue playing as a DRX player. And then I mean, freeing. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, listen, freeing's a fragger. He always has been. So if he gets to frag out, yeah, I guess, I mean, play the Tejo. Like, it doesn't matter. Bane looked very comfortable getting back into the team. Flashback, yeah, he had a slow start on Lotus, but is that how many he had the whole time? Oh my gosh, yeah, 17 first kills. That is actually insane. In your debut match, sure, it was against an Ascension team, but we don't really consider Nongshim the same way we do other Ascension teams. 17 and 9. As the duelist, that's actually like a really, really strong stat. Nearly 2.0 on your first kill, first deaths is great. As someone who plays on a generally system-based team, that's just that stat alone should prove to you that he has the mechanics to be that cracked person who can carry rounds. That's really good. Yeah, that's actually really good. Both of them dropping 58. That's actually kind of crazy too. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I was pretty high on DRX for the year, but this match alone makes me consider them nearly top 3 already. I think like we talked about it in Plat Chat, but the biggest difference was proved importance of fundamentals, right? Versus Nongshim. So like every time you this is what I mentioned on Plat Chat as well, but for instance, it's every time like it's like a 3v3. Nongshim plays very snowbally, which is fine. Nongshim is a snowball team, but DRX is very okay fundamentals. And so Nongshim will have like one guy go out to try to create more space, whereas DRX is always like, all right, reset, cover each other's angles, now we go. And I think it just really, that was a big part of what it came down to, was the training that each team had and some of the veterancy, and DRX just comes out on top. DRX proves why they're able to go so far at internationals and stuff. Okay, so let's talk T1. Oof. Super team Dream dead. Now this doesn't mean not a bad team. This doesn't mean they're a bad team. Perhaps not super. So I don't, but I hesitate because they played really well against Paper Rex, and I just don't know, like, part of this maybe, again, not taking anything away from Boom, but part of it was maybe slightly underestimating Boom. Part of it's maybe just knowing how to play against Paper Rex and things like that. So I'm not sure, but one thing is certain. Meteor is still really, really good. Meteor is still really, really good. There's no doubt about that. And I think Sylvan actually looks a lot better. Sylvan looks a lot more comfy than he did in the offseason. So that's good. Stax is IGLing. Jury's still out for me. Jury's still out for me. Jury's still out for me. And then also leaning heavy into double duelists. Duelists. The answer? Right? Like, is that the answer? Because the more I thought about it in the offseason, I mentioned this before, but I actually think Autumn is one of the coaches that is very well ahead in reading the meta and counters and picks. I do. But I don't know. Right? Well, the Yoru I'm okay with, just even on paper. But the Neon Rays here... Oh, I guess they didn't actually. Yeah, no, they didn't play it on split, so they're not leaning into it. I take that back. But I guess my question is are you playing double duelists just because you can, or because you think that's the answer? Because I'm not sold that that's the answer on Fracture. I don't think it is. But I guess my question is is this a way to, is it a way to get around Tejo? That's my big question. When I see Stacks as IGLing, the jury's still out for me. It does not mean his IGLing is bad. I just don't know if it's great. And that's kind of always going to be the thing with T1. I'd be hard pressed to imagine that this team would become a bad team, right? Like, I don't think it's going to be like last year where they just never figure it out or anything like that. But the question is the expectation of this roster is that it needs to be great. And can they be great rather than good is the question. I guess from here on out, though, the real question, yeah, I guess it's not so much like is Autumn going to be able to carry them or not. The real question is this, I think, more than the offseason, this is where we see if Autumn and co can gel with Stacks and co. Right? Because now you've had official matches. You had an unexpected tough match. You adjusted well against Paper Rex, but that was also Paper Rex. And now as you continue to go on, are we seeing the evolution of T1 or are we seeing you guys kind of stagnate, right? So, to me, that's the big question. But overall, I mean, they seem solid. And if you're solid and you have Meteor and Buzz and Stacks, then you'll be good. I think still expected likely to go Bangkok. I would still consider them likely to go. My stocks on Paper X have dropped a decent amount, but so I still consider Paper X fine to get top 4. I don't know if I consider Paper X fine to go to Masters, but I think T1 is still fine, especially because they're still deep in the upper bracket. So I still consider T1 fine to go to Bangkok. Now let's talk about, last but not least, Nongshim before they get into the game on VCT China. Nongshim, banger debut against ZETA. Versus ZETA, fast and furious as always. But the question will be, still only Neon? Please no. I think the Neon is fine, just so we're clear. Okay, they're doing player entrances. Just so we're clear, I think the Neon is fine. But I think it really pigeonholes them. IMO, it pigeonholes them, right? The team, style-wise, right? Dombi is the bait. You go in, it gets blocked. Now what are you doing, right? And the Neon can't hard carry out of those unlucky situations as much as before. So I would like to see them try a bit more Jet Rays, because I think that would free up Ivy and Francis to also be able to play around the map more. Like this team can play wider macro. They can. They've done it before. But right now I feel like they're pigeonholing themselves into like we hit hard and fast and we go and we basically play Paper X style and we're really good at trading, which they are. But the moment it gets stopped by a team like DRX, it's like, well, you know, and like if DRX can stop it, I would imagine Gen.G can stop it, just because of the styles that they're used to. So I think it's tough. Also, there is definitely hints of overheating, but I'm not sure if that's simply like, I don't think it's just Dombi and the Neon. But again, I think it's they're so used to snowballing, used to being able to snowball out of control, and I think it was just maybe a good reality check that you need to start adapting earlier in the map. Francis is the IGL for Nongshim. Also, to me this continues to be a question. To me, the big question is Margaret's flexibility. And because Killjoy is not going to be your other option in the current meta. So we got to see him be able to do a little bit more than just the hard sentinels. I'm still big. I'm still big on them, but desperately want to see versatility during kickoff. Oh, that's KO. But I would, yeah, like a vice on Margaret would be so good. It would be so good for the team. And I think he could play the vice just fine. But they had, who did they have? Did they have Ivy playing it? Who was playing it? Yeah, Ivy was playing it alongside the Killjoy on Pearl. And Ivy played it well, but it's like, I think it would free up so much more, you know what I mean? Because then Ivy could play the Tejo, and like I think there's just a bit more that they could do. Persia's still the GOAT though. And Ivy is still the vice GOAT. That doesn't change. I'm still big on this team, but I just want to see some versatility just because it would shut up the haters that think they can't adapt. But we'll see if we'll see if they were cooking at all during the offseason for other stuff. I think the Tejo, I will say, Tejo probably got them pretty good. I do think so, because they were probably already set on like still trying to use the neon, etc. And then now the Tejo comes in, and they weren't sure if they wanted to change to that in their opening matches. And I think the Tejo counters their style quite well, actually. So yeah. Oh, also, they did add Val analysis, so let's hope. Yeah, that's where we're at. Obviously the match at VCT China starting now, so we gotta hop back over, but that's where I'm at the first week. So generally there's not any huge disappointments. I think Team Secret, right, is kind of the big disappointment for me, and then T1 compared to and Paper X compared to expectations. But I mean, we'll see. I think the good teams are still good. I think basically we don't have any clear 12th places anymore. And I think it's a very promising year for Pacific. Obviously, we don't know about Talon and Gen G yet, so we'll have to wait until this weekend. But there it is. So let's keep track of this. Let's see how things differ, especially in the lower bracket, because hopefully teams bring out some more things that they cooked up since you're in desperation mode now. And we'll see how far they go. We'll see which teams go to Masters Bangkok. That's gonna be it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll have more as we go on, especially during Masters and stuff too for the Pacific teams. And of course, we are watch partying all throughout kickoff as well for all the different regions, so come check out the live stream. Thanks for watching.